Hi, this is Stephen Me with an introduction to green wave funding. A lot of the slides here are a little text heavy. I'm not going to go through and read them. I'm going to fly through this relatively quickly. You can download the entire presentation with the link. But as an intro to green wave funding, a couple quick highlights. We're going after a market that's estimated to be $200 trillion. I know that sounds like a lot, but that's the funding to sustainable net 2050. We believe what's needed and what we have in place at Greenwave, a dedicated exchange, bond advisory, and AI tools to support that service or that market. Let's just jump right into it. $200 trillion is the estimated amount needed for what's called the net 2050 goals. So far, there's about 30 trillion that's been allocated and mandated into the space, and only about 1 trillion has been issued or deployed in what we call green bonds. So massive amount of capital and overhang needed, but limited qualified projects. And a lot of these projects exist worldwide, all kinds of industries and breakdowns, renewable infrastructure, green bonds, primarily environmental on land, blue bonds. And these are registered securities available to institutional buyers. And when I say mandated, massive companies, BlackRock, JP Morgan, HSBC, these companies have set aside dollars specifically for ESG investing and ESG funding or lending, which are where the green bonds fall. And we have direct relationships with many of these organizations and more. So again, a massive amount of capital. When you look at the growth, green bonds in particular have grown to about $1 trillion in issuance, but still not all the capital is deployed. This article, again, the link is here in the presentation. You can download it. This sums up the opportunity and the industry, in my opinion, as a whole. Here's Royal Bank of Canada triples its lending ahead of shareholder action. So let's just break this down inside the article. Royal Bank of Canada has committed $500 billion, lots of money. They've only deployed $29 billion. They're getting shareholder pressure and mandates to deploy more capital, but the businesses have to qualify with green activities, and 79% of the bank's clients have started or want to start an energy transition plan. So again, lots of money, deployed capital, not enough projects. And that's what Greenwave is set up to solve. Initially, we're launching a green bond exchange, a dedicated green bond exchange. So the technology with the exchange can sit between what are called issuers. These are the companies and countries and governments issuing the bonds, the investors who want to invest in the bonds, a bond advisory service to help more issuers qualify for bonds to access the money, and AI-enhanced tools to streamline the entire process. And green bonds, when we look at it, the penetration is only about 3 to 5% of the total bond market. So this is an exciting opportunity, but it's also taking a little bit of a traditional opportunity of bonds and just putting a green wrapper on it. And within the market penetration, there's one dedicated exchange, several regionals, but the market should support 10 to 12 exchanges. If you look globally at something like a global stock market, the bonds are as big or bigger than stocks, and there's a lot of themes driving it. Again, you can go back and read all of this. Dedicated bond exchange, the big one we track, Luxembourg, dedicated green. Singapore is interesting. It's a financial center and does issue green bonds, but they're more integrated up into the Singapore Stock Exchange, where Luxembourg is a dedicated green exchange. We believe the opportunity is really in the dedicated side. And that's what we're looking to do. We've got a couple different what we call jurisdictional targets for layout. Option A, platinum level premier. This is the one we're pursuing. Every one of these I'm going to outline. We have relationships and opportunities, but we think they have different leverage. Option A is in Abu Dhabi, ADGM, UAE, license for bond trading. It's institutional regulated, QSIP registered with a digital strategy for a retail customer. Again, I can explain that further. But basically, institutional bonds are only available to qualified institutional buyers, 100 million and up. And we could do a separate retail strategy. We think option B Potential with Dubai under their Dubai Global Markets and VARA, the DIFC. Option C at Texas and Dubai. And then we can look at different combinations, but we're pursuing option A right now. We've got great relationships we'll explain later at both. The exchange service has multiple revenue models. For anybody that understands exchanges, the exchange makes money. But in order to get more bonds issued, you actually need more issued bonds. A bit of a conundrum there. And Greenwave has Greenwave services. We actually have a bond advisory service that sits below and in conjunction to the exchange because we believe more companies could issue bonds to access the capital that's going to continue to grow. And this is where the services side really comes in. Getting a green bond structured is a pretty complicated mess of a lot of different audits and evaluations. Some things can be improved with AI. That's what the blue is here. We're not an AI company as much as we will utilize best in breed tools to streamline the entire process. And so as an advisory firm, there is services revenue, everything from the strategy and structure to the ongoing project management, all the way through to syndication fees on the advisory side. And what we've done with Greenwave Funding and Greenwave Services is built a tier 1 platinum level of service providers, legal, audit, exchange, and syndication. We have more that are coming on. And some of these companies, as our syndication partners, we're finalizing agreements to actually be their partner to issue the bonds and provide the service for them to deploy capital back to their customers. So a real symbiotic relationship. We've got some great projects we've already signed. $5 billion in Arizona, 4.5. I think this just went to $5 billion in Indonesia, $300 million on a solar mobility. They should have about $1 billion total. And then this is the service revenue. Again, the exchange makes money on listing and traditional. The bond services side, these are bonds we have in place, as well as the initial bond amount, the potential service fee for the success in syndication. I didn't put the service revenue in. It's important but relatively minor, but the success fee on any of the bonds that get issued and syndicated can drive tremendous service revenue. And again, trying to be a full service solution with Greenwave. Not only do we have the advisory services to get the bonds issued, then we can syndicate them into our own exchange platform and listing. Open an insurance rating company. We want to be able to reinsure our own bonds, do private placement direct, syndication out, and at the end, restructure the bonds as well. This makes Greenwave extremely unique because there's individual companies performing individual services. We can wrap everything under one umbrella and be a premier platinum level certification, issuance, exchange, and restructuring company. Teams in place. Again, you can go back and read. I've done multiple public companies. Walter comes out of the public company market. So does Igor. Advisors, former BlackRock, Stephen Ball Zolpiker, who we have at Sheikh Nayan's office. This is our Abu Dhabi relationships. Kevin out of Bermuda, Dr. Abdallah Kablan. And we can add, the links are coming in on the bottom there. Capital raise. So the capital raise is split in two formations. We want to look at about 20 million total, but we want to phase it out. 5 million is our initial phase with a capital allocation, 2 million into working capital. We need to staff up on the Greenwave Funding. The advisory services side really needs to bring on more people. We've got all kinds of deal flow on the bond issuance and then the technology acquisition and licensing. So we're already in revenue mode here on the services, the technology and licensing. And then phase 2, we want to bring in more partners, tier 1 partners, and really do an expansion and market capital. The goal with Greenwave is to move through the launch of the bond exchange, establish the reinsurance company, and then have an exit of liquidity probably 26, 27 and be acquired by a bank. We believe once we've built the entire process of Greenwave, We control the whole channel. So again, quick conclusion, $200 trillion potential market, dedicated green bond exchange, a bond advisory service to support it, AI enhanced tools makes Greenwave a really unique investment opportunity. So thank you again. Feel free to reach out. Stephen Mead, Greenwave Funding.